anybody who might now be watching the YouTube video that Reverend Kelly will prepare from this talk. So we're glad that you have decided to watch our videos. Please join our YouTube channel and watch all our YouTube videos. We have hundreds of them now. Okay. So it's the CMC's birthday. So happy 32nd birthday, CMC! Woohoo! I want to thank the Foundation for Inner Peace who sent these flowers, had them delivered here today. So thank you, Tam Morgan and Bob Rosenthal and Judy Scott Whitson and whoever else at the Foundation for Inner Peace sent us these lovely flowers. And look at these beautiful red roses that came from Marlene. Thank you very much. I love flowers. I love receiving flowers. It's always a good occasion to send me or the CMC flower. Come anytime.
Yeah, I love flowers.
Okay, so it's our 32nd birthday, but as I was saying to some people, the actual date and what we're actually celebrating isn't really that distinct. It's a little bit of a blur. And I actually, I was asking for guidance for quite a while about what to talk about today, and I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time talking about our antecedents, actually, what came before Community Miracle Center. But first of all, what are we celebrating today? So, 32 years ago, on the first Sunday in March, which was March 1st in 1987, but it's the first Sunday in March, we as the entity, Community Miracle Center, actually we were called California Miracle Center at that time, but we as California Miracle Center, we as the CMC, had our first Sunday gathering at our office space at 612 Clayton, which is at the corner of Haight and Clayton, and that's in the Haight Ashbury district. And I don't remember how many people were there, not very many. Reverend Larry and I were there, and maybe there were 2 or 3 other people. I really don't remember. I know that none of you were there. That much I know. I don't think you were there. That first Sunday? No, because you didn't join.
First Sunday, but after that.
After that, yeah, you came to Clayton. You're maybe one of the only one here that ever came to 612 Clayton. Right. That's right. Reverend Todd did come to 612 Clayton. So the reason why I say it's a little fuzzy, because it wasn't our first Sunday gathering. We had been actually gathering on Sunday in that same office space since the July of the previous year. But we had been gathering as under the auspices of a different organization. We were then the California Miracles Foundation. And even celebrating July, when we had the first Sunday in July, we had our first Sunday gathering, and not really our birthday either, because we'd already been in that space for about 1.5 years having A Course in Miracles meetings at different times, but we just hadn't had a Sunday gathering. People were doing Sunday service in other churches and things. The idea of doing a Sunday gathering hadn't really occurred to us. But I spearheaded that because I got tired of going to a religious science church that I was going to and hearing a nice message, but it was a religious science message. It wasn't a Course in Miracles message, and I just got it one day like, this is great, this isn't my spiritual path, and I want to go somewhere where I can hear A Course in Miracles on Sunday morning, and if it's just myself or just Larry and I and 1 or 2 other people, or if it's just Larry and I, that will be fine, but at least we'll do that. And so that's why we started the Sunday gathering, and many times it was just Larry and I. And that was fine. And that's what we were doing. But we had already been meeting in that same space at 612 Clayton since May of 1985. And I could celebrate May of 1985, but that's not really when we started either, because we moved from another location at Masonic in Haight and another organization that was called the San Francisco Miracles Foundation. And I had been going to the San Francisco Miracles Foundation at that time for about 3 years, and I had been, for about 2 years, been leading their Sunday evening group. Basically a Course in Miracles discussion group. We got together, we read the text, and I loved going to that group. Now the San Francisco Miracles Foundation was started by a woman named Joanne Hahn, and I want to just today, on this occasion of our birthday, I want to acknowledge Joanne Hahn. She's made her transition, not with us anymore. but she was my very first human A Course in Miracles teacher. So when I first started going to A Course in Miracles groups, she was the facilitator of those groups, and she was a practicing psychologist that had turned her apartment into a miracle center. And she had groups there, she put out a newsletter, we had social events. I started going there, I believe in 1981. I think it was the first meeting I went there was actually in 1981, and as I said, I went there for about 2 years before I had the opportunity to lead a group there. So, you know, I've been doing all of this work now for, 38 years or so, and been leading groups in one shape or form for 36 years. And so this is our 32nd birthday, but as I said, it's all a little bit of a blur for me. In fact, we didn't used to celebrate this day at all because it was just kind of, didn't really think of it as our birthday. But I remember when we hit the 10th anniversary of March, and somehow the idea came, well, this is our anniversary, we should celebrate this. So the very first time we ever celebrated our birthday was our 10th, I remember that. Up until that time, we never really celebrated. And after we had been meeting at 612 Clayton as Community Miracle Center for about 6 months, and Reverend Ted came to the 612 Clayton address. Yeah, the building got changed, there was a zoning problem, we had to move, and that's when we moved and found the place at 2269 Market. So, my thing about what I was thinking about the antecedents and the history, I wanted to talk today a little bit about why this kind of day is significant for me. And that's because because of all of this history. It's significant because of what we've accomplished at Community Miracle Center. We've accomplished great things. We've had conferences. We've we've kept our publication, Miracles Monthly, going for, hundreds of issues. We've had miracle experiences. We've had Sunday service. We've had classes. We've ordained 116 ministers. I mean, all the amazing things we do. But we didn't start from nothing. We evolved out of something else. And I wanted to just give a little honor to that something else that we evolved out of. And that's why I had Reverend Brad read that thing, especially for this line. It says, real birth is not a beginning, it is a continuing. Everything that can continue has been born. So we're celebrating something, but it's a continuing. And I think about that, even my involvement with A Course in Miracles wasn't the beginning of my spiritual quest. I had been a spiritual student for 10 years before that. And I'd studied all kinds of things, and I got very into the Carlos Castaneda material for quite a while. I was really into the Seth material for quite a while. I did some classic Hindu studies for quite a while. I was very into the Tao Te Ching, which I've talked about for a long time too. So it's all just a continuing. And actually, when I look back through my life, that's what I see my life has always been. And actually, when you think about even the history of our species, this evolution that we have, and this evolution in consciousness, and this evolution of civility, and this decline in violence, which I have talked about, which is really marked, you can see that we continue to evolve. There is this continuing thing. And I've often talked about it, I did years ago, it's a certain energetic, a certain healing energy that's going on. And it's going on because of us and with us, but it's in some way almost independent of us as well. And my task, I felt, and maybe I commission all of you with the same task, is you just surf that like a wave. I mean, it's just like a wave of energy, and it's just your job to sort of get on top of it and balance, and it will just carry you. And I feel that's what Community Miracle Center has always been. We're just trying to surf this A Course in Miracles healing wave and just let it carry us to the work that it would have for us, and it has. I mean, with that conceptualization, not that I'm steering it as much as just allowing myself to keep a balance on floating on it. I learned a lot with the early organizations that I was involved in before Reverend Larry and I formed what became the Community Miracle Center. And it probably could not have happened any other way. Each of those early organizations dissolved in kind of a mess, with angry boards and people resigning and turmoil and chaos. And with each of those experiences, you learn something. So the next organization you form, hopefully you do it a little bit better. I didn't form the San Francisco Miracles Foundation, but I was on the board. And then in 1985, the director, my first miracles teacher, Joanne Hahn, decided she wanted to change the focus of the organization. And of course, many people in the organization wanted it to stay focused on A Course in Miracles. And she wanted to focus on the International Forgiveness Week, this other thing. And so we had a huff, and so some of us left. And that's why we formed the California Miracles Foundation. And, but I was looking through some old stuff today, and I found an early newsletter, our magazine that we used to call Miracles, for the San Francisco Miracles Foundation. And this one is dated January, February 1985. And, you know, I look at it and think about it. And you know, I was looking at it today and just really kind of loving it. You know, I just think about all the things that we said and did, and I was reading a few of the articles here, and I found that I could just resonate with all of these things and to still support everything that was said here, everything that I said, and feel real happy for it. I feel like we have continued to do, and I have continued to do what I was guided to do. And I look at this, there's an interesting, I wrote this little thing in a little box here, and I wanted to be provocative because I was hoping to spark a little conversation. So I took a quote from A Course in Miracles. This quote: "It is sure that those who select certain ones as partners in any aspect of living and use them for any purpose which they would not serve with others are trying to live with guilt rather than die of it." So then I said, what does this mean about marriage? Is monogamy an error? How do we apply this to your life? Send us your answers. So I was trying to provoke a little that same conversation that I had done for 30-some years, right? About Course in Miracles says you can't select certain ones as partners and use them for a reason that you aren't willing to use somebody else for. Well, what about sex? And, you know, what does that mean? Isn't that really challenging about the traditional way that we usually have relationships? And I was talking about that in January of 1985. So I'm still talking about that. So I don't know if I have the answer to that, but I think it's a really good conversation. I'm still happy to talk about it. So that organization dissolved. Two of the board members and I formed the California Miracles Foundation. We rented the office space at Haight and Clayton. Reverend Larry was not on that board of directors. He was not involved with that organization, but we were partners at the time, and he used to come to a lot of the meetings, and he helped us a lot in the forming and just the running of that organization. And that organization existed for 2 years. I've got bound volumes of the newsletters that we produced for that organization. I was just looking at this newsletter and you know, thinking about it. And in the very first page, which was a statement from the board of directors, said, "What do we want to come of this?" I was really happy to see that I was still focused on the same things that I am now. And it says, "And then there is the Course's injunction on page 6 of the text, which tells us that we, quote, must join the great crusade to correct error." So I was on that message about joining the great crusade, And this was in 1985. This was 14 years before I even knew, because I didn't have the newer edits, that the Great Crusade had a slogan named "Listen, Learn, and Do." But I had focused on that passage, and I had been, thinking of that, or that had ringed something true in my mind that I wanted to focus on it way back in May of 1985. It was one of the very first things that this new organization, the California Miracles Foundation, would talk about. And then I wrote a little article in here, the first one that has just my name on it and not the whole board. It's called Healing with the Course. So see, that was one of my first messages. I wanted to talk about healing, still on that, the healing team. So this is 1985. I said, 5 years ago, a loving friend gave me a copy of a book of spiritual teachings, which she said was the most profound and highest teaching she had yet come across. I had been a sincere spiritual student for many years and was eager to look at this book, which my friend spoke of so enthusiastically. That's how I was introduced to A Course in Miracles. I started reading the text, chapter 1, The Principles of Miracles, and I was intrigued and excited. It was different and interesting. Then I came to miracle principle number 24. Miracles enable you to heal the sick and raise the dead, because you made sickness and death yourself and can therefore abolish both. I had heard this before, especially in the Seth material, which I had studied extensively, but never was the message so clear and real to me. So, and I talk about that. I was reading A Course in Miracles that first day I was exposed to it, and I came across Miracles Principle number 24. Miracles enable you to heal the sick and raise the dead. And I just thought that was such an audacious claim that the book was making, that it was going to enable us to heal the sick and raise the dead. So I existed with that organization for 2 years, and I was the president of that board of directors, like I'm the president of this board of directors. And then we had all this controversy. And the reason why we had all this controversy, there's several reasons. And I wanted to share them. One, because I got ordained through that organization, and so did one of the other members, but he got ordained and he wanted to be a little quiet about it. He just wanted sort of the umbrella so that he could do counseling in case it ever came up. But I got ordained and I wanted to put the Reverend title right up on my name. So I started, signing everything and putting Reverend Tony Ponticello on everything, and they didn't like that. They thought that wasn't what the whole program was about. We weren't going to make a big issue about being a minister, but I was making it, I was embracing it and claiming it. And then I started Sunday gatherings. I started Sunday service, and they didn't know how they felt about that, but not that many people were coming, so they didn't really care. They never came, but Reverend Larry and I were there, and then a few other people started coming. And then we got to the brand new year, which was 1987, and I decided that I wanted to start charging for classes. Instead of just doing them as drop-ins, I wanted a more committed group of people. And I said, and I got it. I said, the way you get more committed group is you charge for them. And if they pay for it, they will come. And they didn't like that either. So now I had kind of like 3 strikes working against me. And then I wrote an article about sex. And that was the final straw. We had this, they forbid me to publish the newsletter. We had to have an emergency board meeting. We fought about it, and the only thing we could do was dissolve the organization. So we dissolved the organization. However, because I had been the president of that organization, when I had negotiated the lease with Skyline Realty, since we were a new organization, they didn't let me sign the lease in the name of the organization. I only signed it in my own personal name. So what my 2 partners didn't realize was by dissolving the organization, they basically had just turned it over to me. So, because I had the lease was in my name. So they basically had to leave. They had to leave, and I had the Miracle Center. I just had to form a new corporation, which I did with Reverend Larry, and that's what we are. That's that new corporation, the Community Miracle Center. But see, that's why it's all so kind of fuzzy for me, because we just continued. For the people that were coming, they didn't really even see a difference. We just continued on. Some of the teachers were changing, but the Sunday gathering continued on. My Sunday meeting continued on. A publication continued. The name changed a little from California Miracles Foundation to California Miracles Center. Nobody thought that was particularly significant. And we just continued on and on and on, and that's how it is, because life, I believe, is that continuing. And I'm just sharing all this story just to, get it out there, what the whole background of this, but I'm sharing it so that you look at your own lives a little bit. And yeah, you all picked up A Course in Miracles at one time, but I know there were probably other things that you did and studied and lessons that you learned that were also very valuable and important that led you to that place where you could pick up A Course in Miracles and be open to it. And that's what I was thinking about when I was thinking about this being our birthday. And then as soon as Community Miracle Center, of course, we started publishing, and this is the first bound volume of our publication. Wow. And on the very fourth issue, I finally got to write my article about sex.
Fourth.
Yeah, well, I had other things to write about. I mean, it wasn't that big of an issue for me, but I knew I was going to. And actually, this article I know is much better than the one I wrote that they blocked. I had more time to think about it. The name of this article is To Bed or Not to Bed, Is That the Question, or Sex and the Single Miracle Student. That's the name of that article. So, here we are in celebration of the 32nd birthday. And I do think it's significant because there was something about the energy of Reverend Larry and I coming together, forming this new organization, that made it carry through. And we've had tumult and problems and issues and things on the board, and I could talk all about those, but something that was just firm enough and solid enough. I mean, we had a solid enough surfboard to be able to surf that wave without wiping out or that board breaking up. And that's what we're still doing. We're still surfing the wave. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for surfing this wave with me for 32 years, and here's to an infinite amount in the future. Amen.